I'm sure I could take up all of the time on the tape to talk about my wonderful son, Stephen Fitzgerald Key. He is the eldest grandson of the late Elder Robert Lewis Sr. and Lucy Edna Ashton Key, the late Alma Deans. His grandmother is L. Rebecca Beelan Deans. His godparents are the Reverend and Mrs. Dr. Victor B. Phillips Sr. The night before Steve was born, his uncles and aunts were engaged in a game of Racco in our bedroom. Of course, I was winning as usual, and I was also doubled over with laughter. Well, 24 hours later, Steve was born. The entire Key family took over the waiting room at the hospital, and before I even knew that I had had a son, Steve had been presented to them. When Steve was 1 week old, his father, Robert Lewis Key Jr., known as Daddy, Bobby, and King Key, took him to the pediatrician for his first visit. I was still confined to bed. Daddy came home and reported that the physician, Dr. Walter Combs, said that Steve was a wise young fellow, and indeed he is wise. We were proud parents and relatives, and we were very protective. Steve was precious, loved, and given everything a child could need or want, and then some, but he was not spoiled. He was reared in a Christian home and brought to Third Street Church at 6 weeks for his christening. Outside of the home, and Steve was cared for by his grandmothers and a special aunt, Mrs. Evangeline Key Jenkins. Steve was never taken to a babysitter. He was also always obedient, respectful, kind, and charitable. At the age of 2, when he was being cared for by his grandmother, Mommy Lou, she collapsed in the kitchen one morning while Steve was sitting at his little table eating his daily cream of wheat sprinkled with sugar. His grandmother was found on the floor before lunchtime. Steve was still sitting at his little table, not moving because he had been trained to sit until he was instructed to move. Steve was an honor student who could always be found sitting quietly reading or playing with his Legos. He had no desire to be running around outside. He began playing the piano at age 2. His first piano teacher outside of the home was Mrs. Gwendolyn Jennifer, a classmate of mine. Steve was not interested in his lessons, but he wanted to play what he wanted to play. Mrs. Jennifer told me that he was wasting my time, her time, and my money. We stopped those lessons. Steve continued to teach himself to play the piano. After that, guitar lessons followed along with karate, and he could really kick. In fact, he got into trouble kicking at adults sometimes. He began playing the violin in the 4th grade, eventually becoming first chair in the DC Youth Orchestra, first chair clarinet in the high school marching band. Steve said he thought he could play any instrument there was. We know that Steve's musical idols are Edwin and Walter Hawkins and Richard Smallwood. Steve listened to their recordings and mastered them at the keyboard, all on his own. We never knew that Steve could sing until he was on a program one day at church. We learned that after school and before we would get home from work, Steve would play and sing up a storm. Steve eventually met and developed a friendship and working relationship with his musical idols. Steve's life has always had purpose and direction, with many achievements and accomplishments. It is an honor to be his mother and to speak of my love, devotion, and deep appreciation for such a wonderful son who every day shows me his respect and his appreciation for me.
It gives me great pleasure to offer a word of congratulations to Steve Key on his special day. We're so grateful at Third Street Church of God for his constant faithfulness and his work in the ministry of music. We have had the privilege of watching Steve from the beginning just blossom and grow and to flower into the full bloom of the fruitfulness of the Spirit in his life. And as his pastor, I'm especially pleased and grateful that we have this opportunity to bring honor to Steve and to recognize him and to express our love and appreciation for him for all what he has been and meant to us. We thank God for you, Steve, and may you have many more years of fruitful ministry and music as the creativity continues to flow from the heart of God through your fingers and your voice.
Steve, I know that what we do as musicians, so many times it just takes everything for us to just keep stamina and to keep the notes running straight and to be able to stay on schedule, but you always seem to manage. And I'm sorry that I won't be able to be with you, but I just want to share a thought in song. This is a rendition of Lord Make Me an Instrument of Thy Peace, which you have been to many and to in my life, and a real source of encouragement. As I've told you many times, I always know that your task is going to be done, and it's always done well. And we'd just like to share this with you.
It's an honor and a pleasure to make a few remarks about Stephen Key, one that I've known for quite a few years, since he was in the D.C. Youth Orchestra. I was always marveled at his ability, his musicianship. As a matter of fact, I would regard him as a musician, playing most of the instruments. But above all, his humble spirit, cooperation, is one of the most outstanding qualities that you can see in a person. I've worked with Steve Key as accompanist. He was my accompanist on several occasions, and I've enjoyed his musicianship and we've played together in the instrumental ensemble at Third Street Church of God. I'm very happy to know that he has received many honors worldwide, and he deserves every bit of it. Steve, I commend you, and I wish you the very best in all of your endeavors. Be successful and be blessed. Thank you for this opportunity.